Hello, I'm Miss Patterson, and I'll be reading Chapter 9, A Well-Willed Chap. As Kenny bolted off the main street in Round Brook, he knocked over a cart of dragon trinkets, and they spilled near a group of townsfolk who were sharing a keg of ale and laughing loudly. As he scurried past them, he heard one exclaim, "I bet 7 to 1 that the dragon flambés the old coot in 5 minutes. It's gonna be a roasting good time." "I can't wait," another added. "It'll be a hot time up on the hill tomorrow, a scorcher for sure." A boy sitting with the group spied Kenny and ran into the alley, blocking his way. "Hey, you live up there on the farm near the hill, don't you?" he asked. "I heard you seen that dragon up there. Did you? Maybe eating a cow or something?" Kenny had seen this prickly kid before in school. He was a couple of years older and a couple of pounds heavier, hence his nickname, Porky. "Yeah," he said, looking Porky in the eyes. That fiery feeling was still in his stomach. "I've seen the dragon, and there isn't going to be a fight tomorrow. So forget about it." Kenny's heart was pounding. He waited for the wallop to come from the young ruffian. "Now don't worry your little head," Porky's father said. He put his burly hand on Kenny's shoulder reassuringly and slowly separated the two boys. "If old Georgie can't get that beast, well then, we'll all go up there and kill him, right, boys?" Amidst the whooping of the revelers, Kenny wiggled free and took off as fast as his legs would take him, leaving Round Brook far behind. It was almost sunset by the time Kenny arrived back at his little farmhouse. His father was bringing the sheep in from the fields, and he could smell the aroma of vegetable stew as he approached his front porch. A cool breeze welcomed him home amidst a trio of chirping crickets. Kenny slumped through the house and flopped down on his bed. He pushed all his pillows off the covers and got under his blanket, staring at the cracked, parched ceiling. Why couldn't this be like a fairy tale? Why did the dragon have to show up and be a good dragon? Why did the only person in town who just happened to be a dragon slayer also happen to be my only other friend in the world? He looked down at his bookshelf and gazed at the books that George had given him over the years. In some of them, there were wizards and witches who could give you enchanted weapons or supernatural powers that allowed you to overcome your foes and save the day. Kenny's life didn't have these villains intent on doing nothing but bad things. It was more complicated than that. Come to think of it, he had no foes, really, except now maybe all the townsfolk who had come to witness this battle. Sure, he thought, this could be the most famous battle of all. Folks have heard about something this big, but they've never seen anything like it. But these are my friends, and they're betting on who will win. "Kenneth," his mother interrupted his thoughts. "I've invited someone for dinner who really wants to see you." Kenny pulled his ears over his eyes and rolled over in his bed. "I don't want to come out, Mom. I just want to stay in here." "I think you should get up, son," his mom said as she entered the room and put his folded laundry in his dresser. She sat down on the bed and stroked his furry head. I just made you a bowl of my vegetable stew, and there are fresh butter rolls for dipping." "Is there ginger beer?" Kenny asked, peeking out from under his ear. "No," his mother answered as she rose and went to the door, "but your friend has brought you some birch beer. So wash up and come on out for dinner." Kenny washed his hands and face and peered into the kitchen. Sitting at the table with his mom and dad was George. "Hello," the boy said, plopping down in his chair and staring at his stew. "Hello, Kenny," said George. "I hope you don't mind me following you back home. I wanted to talk to you about tomorrow. Your parents tell me that the dragon is quite a well-willed chap, and—" "Graham," Kenny interrupted. "His name is Graham." Well, perhaps this Graham and I can have a chat about tomorrow and see to, is that Graham, like the cracker?" "Indeedy it is," Kenny's father said, through a mouthful of butter roll, but with an E on the end. "Oh, those are good," George said, as if he was savoring the thought of them. Kenny looked at him for a moment and then stared down at his stew, but he wasn't feeling hungry. He wondered if the codger ever felt the river stones in his stomach. It almost seemed like the knight was having a harder time talking here at the dinner table than anything else. It was odd to think this was the same George who'd been so gallant, so chivalrous, early this afternoon astride his proud mount, and the same George he had known all these years, who had never left his bookshop. "Anyways," George continued, "if this friend of yours is as good a spirit as you've said, well then, perhaps we can converse about the upcoming event and sort something out. What do you say?" Kenny looked up from his soup bowl. George wasn't just some weapon for the king to wield whenever he wanted, after all. Whatever anyone had expected of him tomorrow, the knight was here with Kenny, willing to make amends. "Really?" he said. "You'd do that?" "Certainly," George replied with a smile. "A friend of yours is a friend of mine, remember?" "Good. I'm glad that's settled," said Kenny's mother, "because I've already invited Graham for dessert and coffee. He should be here any minute." Kenny looked up and smiled at his mother, then his father and George. All three were smiling back. Through the window, over their shoulder, he could see the familiar round shape of the dragon bounding across the twilight field toward their house. He took a deep breath, swallowed the stone in his throat, and hoped that dessert would go as well as dinner had.